Welcome to Artist Trauma. This week we did Murphy by Samuel Beckett.
More on that later.
So what did you think of it, Chris?
I have I think I have an incredible amount of complicated and mixed feelings about this book. I'm
Yeah.
very glad to have read it. I think it's a one of a kind book in a lot of ways, but I have very mixed feelings about its execution.
Yeah, it has a lot of really brilliant lines and jokes
Yeah,
that are and there is a consistent level of quality.
all the time, of
But
course.
Jesus fucking Christ, like the language, the aggressively
Especially
esoteric vocabulary. Like, what is this?
I found it especially it was weird. So after page about 100, it it picked back up because the banter among the friends got so great. But I would say from about this is going to be a little unkind, even page 50 to 100, I was dying. I was like please kill me. And I don't know why it was torture for a bit. Don't worry. It was just a little bit of modernistic torture. It's light. It's not like Finnegan's Wake in a certain sense, but there is also a little bit of a lack of music in some of these pages, I think. It's very angular.
Yeah, like it is it is very angular in a certain sense. But I mean just like some of like the better lines are just
Yeah.
things like, you know, Murphy reported to Baum at 2 o'clock and entered upon the experience from which he had hoped for better things without knowing exactly why or what things or in what way better. Like that's great.
Fucking great.
Hoping for
Lot
better things without exactly knowing why or what things or in what way better. Like that's the book's filled with stuff like that.
filled with it, lodging her pennyworth of pique in the post Golgothan kitty. Fuck.
Yeah, and it's just like God, like it was happening for like every page. I eventually just gave up, but
The air is always full of such soughing with the body innuendo of eternity. Like, whoa. I don't know what it means necessarily, but like in the aphoristic sense, he's able to get those great rhythms at the sentence level. I think rhythmically, the problem with this novel is that there's two problems. One of them is just like this is kind of an earlier novel, I think, right? So like his
but yeah,
third
this is his first, I think, published
public, right?
novel. Like,
So the sentences are great. I think that the overall rhythm on the larger scale, I'm not sure if he'd figured it out in the middle. Like the second half, I it picked up and it was the rhythm was there on the broader level beyond the sentence level. But for the first half, I found the brilliance at the sentence level didn't translate to a flow at a larger level.
yeah, I guess one issue for I mean, well, this is a little bit of difference for me is I basically liked the book when it was around Murphy. Like
Right.
I he just is
He's
it's just so funny and metaphysically odd.
the chess
Especially
is
section
so
six. Um,
and the chess part, everything about chess
oh, the
was
fucking chess part. That was, I mean,
great. It was
I mean,
perfect.
literally, dear audience member. I mean, this is it. Literally narrates a chess game, as you can see. Um,
And then he gives commentary on the chess game that he
and then
gives
there
us.
and then there's commentary. Like you see how there's like letters next to some of those. Like, oh, there's the commentary, and the commentary is just brilliant. Um,
Oh, by the way, I just have to say one more. I mean, we're gonna have a million one-liners we gotta say because the book is full of them. But I think personally, my favorite is like they're trying to describe Murphy, and Wiley goes, "Yeah, Mr. Murphy," said Wiley, the ruins of the broth of a boy." Perfect, and it's only Beckett, right? Like that can't have been written by anyone else. That's just purely Samuel Beckett. And the chess is Beckett. The rule, the how he somehow makes it more exciting when you just get chess moves.
but I mean, like some of these lines are, it just out of the chess game where it's like, you know, B. the primary cause of all White's subsequent difficulties. C. Apparently nothing better bad as this. D. An ingenious, beautiful debut, sometimes called the pipe opener. E. Ill judged. It's just so on and so forth. It's like,
It's great.
and my favorite one of all of these. P. No words can express the torment of mind that goaded White to this abject offensive.
Yeah.
I hope desperately to be able to say that in my life.
Yeah, yeah. And so, oh, okay, wait. So, like, really quick, this is not a plot book by any means, but we'll just so we can say the
Yeah,
plot
yeah,
really
yeah.
easily.
What is it
Uh,
all about here?
Murphy is a man. He has qualities. They're
And
strange.
arguably.
And arguably a man. He doesn't want a job. And his prostitute girlfriend's like, you need to get a job. And he's like, well, as soon as I get a job, you won't love me, you know.
Yeah, either me, my mind, or my body must go. Um,
Yeah. So he basically goes out and tries to pass time not getting a job, and his friends do a bunch of confusing things that I don't really know what the point of their friends
yeah,
were.
it's hard to follow the
Hard
friend.
to follow, but the main point is eventually Mr. Murphy winds up working, or Murphy. It's really important which, depending on who you ask. He winds up at a sanitarium and plays chess with a crazy guy. And they play non-confrontational chess mostly for the
Yes,
most part, where they're not taking any pieces.
aggressively Fabian, we might say.
Aggressively. Yeah. And he's rather kind to the crazy people, and he's nice, and
he,
the other
he,
people
he's
aren't.
on the same wavelength
It's
as.
on the same wavelength. This is not One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, though. There's it really, like, they're at a sanitarium, but whatever. I don't know, right? Like they could have been in a jail or something. Like it's important, but it's not a novel about that. It just was a setting to give you a chess game.
Yeah, I mean it's well. I mean the sanitarium is it is something that comes back up in other Beckett novels.
And all of his people are crazy. I
Yeah,
mean,
all they're at various states of dementia.
yeah.
We might say.
The craps last tape, dementia, I mean, there's a lot of joy over non-neurotypicality in Beckett, and I'm here for it. It's great. It's fine.
Um,
But I mean, what I mean is, like, it doesn't matter that they're sanitarium because they're all crazy always. It's not really like,
yeah, it's as in the sanitarium. I mean, it's sort of thing where it's like you can just. Yeah, it's not a plot book.
it's not a plot point. So I think that I have two critiques. One of the deeper one is not something he could change, but I'm sure he'll use to his advantage later. Is that this is a novel, but so much of the narrative is framed as if it were already a play. There's so much language that Beckett uses that is play-like. I gave here's one example I highlighted, but it's everywhere. Like every page has a description that's like a theatrical description. Is It burst on the floor without a sound, so that water is oozing towards the center of the floor throughout the scene that follows. That's like actually just a straight theater direction. Like there's not even any
well,
difference, right? It's like there it is.
it's a kind of well the thing is about the style is it's more it's not it's not as if he's moving in the direction of theater. It's more just it
Mhm.
has this very funny I don't know how to describe it, but like self-referential quality like that where it's like
Oh yeah.
where as in like one thing is like from the very first page it's just mentioning something about Murphy's mind and these three states he goes into, but we will only get into a description of that in section 6. And that keeps getting rubbed in that we're going to talk about that in section 6.
And
um
like we did, and I was wondering if we were gonna. And it
yeah,
was this short little chapter. It was just
it's a
like,
good chapter, but it's brilliant, it's brilliant,
oh,
like
it was one of the best parts of the book. I mean, it was such needle precision psychology, wasn't it? I mean, it was just like it was like a laser beam.
Yeah, just just this vision of Murphy sitting naked at his rocking chair, bound up, going between these three states of consciousness, either between what is it, um, basically arbitrarily imagining different combinations of things,
Yeah,
like Miss Kerrigan being assaulted by um,
one
Ticklepenny,
of the other
um,
people. Yeah,
um, to the Half-Life territory of just sort of beatific bliss of just resigned abstraction, um and then finally like the sheer chaos of the darkness, being a mote surrounded by non-Newtonian motion.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
great.
and like,
It's
which
great.
is good. And it's also like, I say this book is dense, but what's funny is that any psychological description is very followable. The hard parts to follow are more like the literal, like where's that guy, when's he moving on scene, where are those people, why are they over there. But the psychological description is eminently linear, and it's not linear but followable. It's not, I never lose my, like in chapter 6, I'm just there for it without any questions.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the big reason why is because it's not nearly as aggressively elusive, as in the other sections. Like it's like it really feels like so much of the time it's like, it feels like, am I missing a lot of stuff because I don't know astrology? Um
And the answer is yes. But that's part of the self-referential. Isn't there a part where he says something kind of referring to the fact that you're gonna miss things? I didn't mark the page.
oh, I don't remember, but that's an important thing to
Well, it's not. I don't remember if I don't remember if that was in this
yeah,
one or a
but
different one, so let's not. Another theme. So you referenced, the self-referentiality.
mhm.
Um, this hooks up with Beckett's presentation of time in like every in Krapp's last tape. There's a self-referentiality in a lot of his work. Um, Not just in time. I just mean self-referentiality. He does it in the same way, right? Like there's a certain amount of repetition in Beckett, but it's never boring, ever.
Well, like here's like one particular one where actually
Yeah,
I think where that comes up is one line on page 99 where he's just saying, um he, um he's upset that didn't extend something because
yeah.
tubes and wires were available, and it says he went on to speak of tubes and wires. Was it not just the beauty of tubes and wires that they could be extended? Was it not their chief characteristic the ease with which they could be extended? What was the point of going in for tubes and wires at all if they did not extend them without compunction whenever necessary? Did they not cry out for extension? Ticklepenny thought he would never stop saying feverishly the same thing in slightly different ways. It's that self-reference they're talking about. Like, yes, he's doing that, and then a character is pointing it out.
Cool. Ooh, ooh.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so many of his characters do that. I would bet if you asked Beckett about that, he would just say, "Yeah, because people as a species fucking do that. Like that's like he's just writing out what we all
Well,
do all the time, right?"
this is like the Pinter dialogue in
Yeah,
birthday party, where it's like just the characters are just saying nothing to themselves in so many different ways.
yeah, yeah. Bullshit in a sense, but not really. It's not really bullshit. It's just the chain of thought. And it's just to say it in a Beckett way, it's so sad how the chain of thought resembles almost to a T what is also considered bullshit. It's like, so I think that's a theme that you could dwell on for a long time in a lot of Beckett, is how he does that repetition. The other one that is just so ubiquitous with Beckett is the fucking body. I mean, the whole opening is he's like in this weird thing, and then by the end, it's like every page. Like, here's the end describing Mr. Kelly. It was only in the legs and face that Mr. Kelly was badly gone. He still had plenty of vigor in his arms and torso. So the body humor is, and it's not really, because the phrase body humor is like farts and piss jokes, but like it's not that. It's more like literal marionette version of bodies. Like the body as a puppet. I don't know. How would you describe his body humor? Because he does it all over the place.
Well, it's this quality of the human ruin, just the
Yeah.
sort of grotesqueness of it. I mean it's interesting, just I it's odd saying it, but it's weird, the Platonism in the book,
Mm.
where, or Cartesianism, however you want to put it exactly, of a very there's, the book is in a big way about this very hard clash between the body and soul,
Yeah.
and the body is this very coarse physical thing. um I mean, his girlfriend's an ex-prostitute.
Right.
He doesn't want to work because that withdraws him away from his mind. But the thing is, the mind, one thing that's sort of the funny contrast is the mind is not exactly an exalted thing either. It's its own like little solipsistic, what's the word someone uses for him? It's a seedy solipsist. So it's like a seedy
Yeah.
solipsistic universe of his, this little world. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's almost like the outplaying of, if you take the Cartesian mind body dualism seriously, like too seriously, right? Because you wind up at this the all the jokes in this book. If it's really that separate, which I mean,
well,
I'm
if you
not
want
a
to take it
I'm not a
really,
dualist in that way. I mean, it's not like that's
well,
but Beckett writes like
I
really like
actually,
he
I feel
did.
like what it'd be is, this is hardcore Cartesian dualism if there's no God. Um, like you don't
Yeah,
know
because
if
like
that
there's no
world.
one running the machine in the head.
Yeah, you don't know if there's anything that connects with whatever. Um, let's see. There was
I
a
mean, it's kind of nihilistic a little. Is it? I mean, okay, like what? Like I think one of the things that is fun but also tricky about Beckett is like, you got to help me. Nihilism isn't the right word, but on a certain level, there's not a lot like to live for in
oh,
this.
I mean, it is nihilistic in a very real sense of the word. It's
You,
not.
you would
It's not.
agree with me
No,
on that?
I would say that it's nihilism broadly conceived of
Okay.
like, when I normally hear the word nihilism or nihilistic, it's like, oh, like just destroying things pointlessly, or
Yeah.
just like, oh, that, like that school shooter was so nihilistic, and it's like, well, there is such thing as a gentle nihilism, where you just feel like,
Mhm.
yeah, life is meaningless, it's garbage, nonsense, man is a ruin, a husk, and that's just kind of sad. uh, like that's just sort
Uh,
of where you leave it. Like, you don't feel anger about it, you're just like, yeah, it is a shame that the world is a wasteland.
right. Because like I feel like that's like the least Christian view, right? Because Christianity puts such a strange emphasis on man, like de facto. Like you have a mission. You're going for the glory of God from something beyond, not like even just for yourself, but beyond that, this cosmic mission. And like Beckett's sort of like, even if that's all true, it's sort of lame. Like it's a lame mission. Like you're going to get onions or something. Like God told me to go get onions.
Well, well, the idea of I'm just actually now, one thing that Dostoevsky does in Brothers Karamazov is, there's a character that, in a feverish state, sees the devil. Um, and he's talking with the devil. And one thing is, the devil is himself saying, "Well, I'm not actually sure myself whether I'm the only consciousness in reality. or not. Like even the devil is a solipsist.
That's
Um,
great.
and I just find like that, like the idea of a Beckett god of life is just as meaningless to him too.
That's it's funny. So there's a '90s album called "The Lonesome Crowded West" by the band Modest Mouse, and it ends with a song called "It's All Nice on Ice," and it does the flip side of the Dostoevsky. So the plot of the song is the main character dies, and he's sitting in the waiting room in heaven, and a man, what is how to describe it, it's a really great description. A man with a big hat comes all Crisco disco, looking a little bit like everyone you ever seen, with white teeth, and he goes, "Hi, welcome to heaven." And he goes, "Oh, do I get to see God?" And he goes, "No, we were like hoping you know what's going on up here." And it's the same type of thing. It's like you get up there and you're like, "Oh, you're in heaven." And everyone's like, "Yeah, we don't know who's running the ship either." So it's literally an inversion of the Dostoevsky. And I think both are right. That would be Beckett's God, because like even if there was a God for Beckett, like it wouldn't be the Kafka bureaucracy God. It would just be the same thing you said. Sort of, well, sad, I don't know, you know. It wouldn't be able to be meaningful.
I mean, it's but let's put it a different way though. Of
Yeah,
there's no god for him. For Kafka, there could be a god hypothetically or let's put it this way. I could imagine there being a an endless series of divine bureaucrats,
it's the
none of them
structure
quite knowing what the whole picture is.
it's the structure of Scientology. So you pay to get to the next level, and then you pay and you get to the next level. Same thing with Mormonism. The secrets are gradually revealed based on your pocketbook. Yeah, Beckett, you're right. I'm sorry. We have to go back. I cannot read Beckett as anything other than a obvious atheist. There's no, I mean, come on.
Yeah, there's not even. I mean, there's no hint. There's no hint whatever of something mysterious. Because I mean, at least with Kafka, you could kind of imagine like, yes, there's a god, but it's a Lovecraft god who is just so powerful and omnipotent. You can't imagine understanding it. Like that's something you could imagine Kafka holding, or something like that.
And
Um,
I think in between would be Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, where the Earth is going to get destroyed, but it's just because of a highway. It's like eminent domain of the universe will
yeah.
result in the Earth getting destroyed. And that's kind of in between, right? Because it's like, yeah, there are these higher beings, but it's like as above, so below. They're just the same
Well,
rule.
yeah. That actually does feel closer to Beckett. Of the powers, the great powers that be, are as tedious and unpleasant as anyone else. I'm thinking like with Joseph Conrad. He's someone who thinks like the world life is meaningless. At least that's more or less what he's conveying. That it's just this like floundering, spastic chaos to a degree. But there's still like something a little bit mysterious about it. There's still some like grandeur to the affair.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't. It's not like this where and these characters do stuff that's remarkable. Like I'm
Right.
gonna
Well,
go down the fucking Congo, like
and like
remarkable.
Murphy would be like, that's just too much work.
No, like his Congo is rocking back and forth on his chair.
Yeah. Which
uh,
again, like I think there is a hook up there to theater. A lot of the stuff he describes here, he does in his plays. The
yeah,
the in the trash can. Like, there's a sort of
no, like there's a clear like connection to the rest of his work, and in a sense, like when you were saying the prose is very angular, yeah, like that fits for drama in a way that other writers really couldn't. Like, I like Conrad. I mean, I think Conrad's fantastic, but it'd be weird if he had written a play. In my mind, Chekhov, like, yeah, like he definitely, you just read the story, it's like, yeah, this, you could turn this into a play, like he has that kind of style.
Yeah,
um,
I think that where the division here is kind of a Cartesian one. You have the bodies acting, which translates directly onto the stage, and then you have the internal modernistic psychological monologue, which has to be accommodated for in other ways, which is a little different in the plays. They usually just say the monologue, like in Talks tape, he's just speaking the monologue. Um, in Endgame, it's more
it's also interesting with Crap's last tape because it's a introspective, like, layering of monologues. you know
right,
you know
right, and that's how it kind of forms a prose. Not really. It's not. I'm not saying he actually does prose, but that's how there is a sort of internal monologue that he can do that would
yeah,
be
yeah,
written out in a
it's
novel.
it's the most introspective work of theater, I think I've ever written. I think that's the case. um it, um but
So, by the way, something on that God thing earlier and not believing in God and everything, and meaning as well. On my edition, I have this copy. Do you have this copy?
yeah, same copy.
Okay, so it's page 120. He like kind of has the same beliefs about Hugo that you do. It was really funny reading that the day after we chatted about. You're
Oh
like,
God,
oh,
where,
this
oh,
God
oh my God,
motherfuckers.
like, I just must have not been fully attent. Yes, there is. He has something of Hugo. The fire would not depart from his eyes, nor the water from his mouth, as he scratches himself out of one inch into the other, until he shed his mortal mange, supposing that be permitted.
Yeah, I mean that's not a really high thought of Hugo in this. I mean, it is in one sense, but in the other sense, it is literally the compulsion that you were talking about.
Yeah,
It's said very poetically. So
well, and yeah, God. I just Hugo.
I say Hugo, and you go into like a catatonic state. Like,
Yeah, it's just like I just have such. The man can write well sometimes. I believe that gives one can deduce the remainder of my opinion. Um.
so
Oh, I just to quote this random bit. You just
yeah.
1 second. I just lit upon it. Of like, this is Murphy talking to a waitress asking for a tea with less milk. I know I am a great nuisance, but they have been too generous with the cow juice. Generous and cow juice were the key words here. No waitress could hold out against their mingled overtones of gratitude and mammary organs. And Vera was essentially a waitress. Like, what is that? What is this?
And his whole very like almost addiction worthy goal at the end of it is to just scrape out as much tea from this lady as
Yes,
he
we got 1.83 cups approximately for the price of one. Try it sometimes, gentle skimmer. That's a line. That's a line. He's recommending it to the reader. Like, um,
which
to,
which really portrays Murphy as having a certain not healthiness is not the right word, but like he's fine in terms of like he's eking out his random types of satisfaction from the world. They're just really bizarre.
I
It's not
mean,
like,
it's just this kind of uh, it's hard to judge the Beckett characters by what does it say about Murphy that he does this? I think the major thing is it's a basically stupid feudal operation he's performing here. It's just so petty, and fumbling in its fundamental character.
well, yeah, it's kind of like because like okay, on the one level, on just the basic level of the plot, like he's trying to eke out money because he doesn't want to get a job.
Mm.
Um, but on a deeper level, it's like he's trying to ration out his pleasure as much as possible. Like see, look how much tea I got. But at the end of the day, it's just fucking tea. What he's really sort of getting pleasuring in is the rationing itself. Like all of that
Well,
rigmarole
I
was,
want to I want to push back on that a little bit of I don't
yeah,
feel like there's any pleasure going on here in a certain kind of way, or there
uh,
is in a very maybe a certain pleasure but no satisfaction. In that
exact,
um
except for from us, the
yeah,
reader.
except for us because like what are you doing, buddy? Because like there's a whole bit in Malloy about where it just goes on about him deciding like okay if he apparently uses a stone to suck on in his mouth just passively and he collects them on the beach and it's like 4 or 5 pages of him just going into details about well how can I apportion my sucking stones such that I will be using all of them consecutively even though I only have 4 pockets and it goes through all these different mechanisms all
Yeah,
these different ways of going about it um to only end up him just throwing it all to the ground and it's just taking one um because it didn't matter and it's like it's just an exercise in futility and getting the 1.83 cups approximately
yeah.
um is yeah and I just loved by the way just on that little bit like this is almost my favorite part of the book was just that whole um exchange
Oh
uh,
yeah, it's great.
because there was just one more little um oh yes. It's just the way he's just getting like these refills, and it just says she was willing a bit of sweated labor, incapable of betraying the slogan of her slavers. Presumably, the customer is always right. That since
Mhm.
the customer or sucker was paying for his gut rot 10 times what it costs to produce and 5 times what it costs to fling it in his face, it was reasonable to defer to his complaints up to but not exceeding 50% of his exploitation. I just love that. Like
Uh,
5 times more than it costs to fling in his face.
like
Um,
it's like an economic textbook with teeth. Like it's
God.
very, yeah. Well, that I mean, and that if you think about it in a weird way, there's a connection there between that just hyper minuscule description and the fact that he gives you the whole damn chess game. He doesn't say like they played chess. He doesn't give you the affects. He just gives you the real. It's like, well, A to B, B to C, C to D. And, it's like, oh, okay, we're just here's the whole chess game.
Yeah, I one thing by the way, just so you know, the rest the Beckett the later Beckett novels are basically like the tea scene. Just that,
Oh, I
again.
love that.
Yeah, so like don't so just so you know that it's much more pleasant. Um
Okay, like yeah, let's talk about. So I mean, we both obviously like if someone put this on like 100 best novels of the century, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, Beckett's great. I don't know if this one would be my choice, but I have so the critiques we're gonna have are still putting him as like one of the great writers.
yeah.
It's just my issues with it are really specific. Um, I think that like this is kind of like a novella in form, so it's not like super long, and it focuses on one character.
Mm.
In a more focused novella, I think would have downplayed. I think chapter 10 would have been incredibly effective if these people just sort of were vomited onto the page. Like we had like half as much as we did about them. Because there's pages of them doing stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't even really remember what they were doing.
Yeah, I'm basically on the same page. It was I guess what would have just been nice is just a little bit more to like distinguish them and to introduce them in a way that was easy to handle because I have to say like it was just hard to like distinguish. I think it took me a little while to realize, oh wait, Miss Coonahan is different from uh Celia.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the
Wiley,
only two women that matter, right? So it's like, what? How am I having trouble with this? There's only the two. That's it.
and yeah, you go back and you can read and you can see like the two characters are actually different, but it's a little hard to keep that in mind. Same thing with like these characters like Neary and Wiley and Cooper. Just a
Yeah.
little bit more to help out the reader to know exactly who is whom. Excuse me, who is
I wouldn't even mind like a more traditional like Cooper, who was raised by mathematician parents and grew up in a hovel on the South Lake of Ontario. I don't know, just like a little bit of traditional. He was 5'9" and had a short nose with blah blah, and then like stuck with it a little bit more like Dickens would, where it's like, okay, like I get it. This is modernism. We're pushing things forward, but I think I lost the differentiation in the other people, not in Murphy, but just like in the others. And Beckett, it's weird because like I don't, in everything we've done by Beckett, it's like that's never been an issue before. But now it is, and it's like, oh, okay, wait. Who and I can't tell if he was thinking that they were the rabble, that was coming after to
uh,
get him.
yeah, it's weird. I don't know exactly what he makes of all of them. I mean Neary is the only real one of them who stands out to me at all because of the whole, he had mastered the art of making his heart stop.
Yeah. That Mary was great.
A power which he loses later on in the novel. Um,
Yeah, but it's funny because it's like, well, that sounds like you're dead. Like
even his
obviously.
finitude has limits.
Yeah, finitude has limits, isn't it? It's the opening with that and the pseudoscience of the guru pamphlet was really peak writing too.
Yeah, and I have to say one thing about like that astrologer pamphlet. There's some like good lines about it of when Celia's handing it to him, and the whole thing is basically like well I'll go to work according to whatever this astrologer happens to say. Um, and when she hands it to him, he's looking at it with horror and despair, and he just pronounces in this grave tone, "My life warrant," you know.
Yeah, like Lord.
And the thing is, though, like the book continually references that back. Like it's continually brought up, like he was speechless. Truly, what Suck had said about silence being a primary skill of his had been validated, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly what it says. I remember that, and that was like 80 pages later. It was not related, and it was great. Um, and also like just the idea that when he's gonna go to work is of course like not yet. Like most importantly, not at the moment, because
Yeah,
it was like astrology is like what was it like next year or something? It was like months
it
later.
was like 1936. Like
Yeah,
that.
oh, it was even later.
Um, I'll be sure to do that. And like it's funny just how it's almost like he's haunted by other features of it. Of like, when Ticklepenny is telling him about not exactly, more or less telling him about a position at the sanatorium,
Yeah,
um, and he's to take care of these lunatics, and like the joke was make like Murphy was greatly struck by the coincidence of both um, uh, lunatics and custodian, as mentioned in paragraphs 4 and 7 of Suck's life warrant.
yeah.
Like that was his brilliance. um,
It's like this light. So like if you just wrote out meta commentary, like I, as the author at this moment, envision that Murphy is over here, but you, dear reader, can picture it this way, the magic would be totally ruined. It would just be bad. But what's great about it is it's so sudden and sparse. It's like as I'll describe as described in section 6, and more importantly, there's no I of Beckett. Like it's not like I, the writer, am telling you a thing. It's like an objective fact. Like when he says as described in section 6 or as in this paragraph, it's not really just an intrusion from Samuel Beckett. It's it's more like a weird fact thing. It's just so much more hip in a weird way.
Yeah, it doesn't have like sometimes those sorts of the narrator stepping in a certain sense can be obnoxious or distracting or overly cute or something like that.
Just like they don't have anything to say and have to fill a page count.
Yeah, but I feel like here the comparison is to like a good comparison is to Rick and Morty,
Yeah.
where it's like Rick and Morty. It's like, yeah, they do all these self-referential things about like, oh, Morty, you're ruining the end speech pilot, the pilot at the end, the speech at the end of the pilot that happens at the beginning of each season or whatever the statement
Or
is.
then, let's go have a really cool, super awesome, self-contained adventure in Atlantis. They
Yeah,
leave.
like
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Like these are like in a show as like the reason why I feel like that works so well in Rick and Morty is because it already has extremely anarchic, freewheeling tone that's so like spontaneous and clever, and you don't know what's around the corner. Um, and like in another show, like you would just fail.
So in his previous shows, so his show before Rick and Morty was Community. And it's really weird watching Community because it's objectively like worse than Rick and Morty. But there's the seeds of his brilliance. So
Mhm,
like in one episode, for example, there's the epilogues are really tragic trope that he has.
mhm,
Like when Rick tries to commit suicide, Morty body buries his own body.
mhm.
Um, in Community, Ahmed goes like, "Oh, well, like we all have all these timelines," and it becomes kind of a joke about like the multiverse. There's all these different timelines where we're all doing really well, and they solve the episode, everything's fine. But Ahmed at the very end goes, "Man, I wonder what's happening in the darkest timeline right now," and the epilogue is like brutally dark. It's the darkest timeline. And like one of them's lost an arm, one of them's an alcoholic, and like it's not really funny. It's kind of like, oh wow, that is the darkest timeline, and that is that's so every episode in Rick and Morty. But in that show, they went He Gilds the Lily. At one point, the darkest timeline comes back, and it's really stupid. Um, and so it does these sort of intrusive things that he didn't quite figure out how to write yet. Whereas by the time he gets to Rick and Morty, he has the combination down.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's with Beckett, he's got that right self referential quality. It's which he kind of continues that in a certain way in the trilogy.
Okay.
He doesn't do it in the same way of like where it's referring. The thing is, it's always a text that's being written. You're reading the product of a text by one of the main characters, and basically you forget about that fact for like most of Malloy, for instance, but like it comes back in a really great way at certain moments. But anyway, you'll see about that when we get around to that.
Oh yeah, we'll do all of his. I mean, but within 10 years, we'll have done his completed works.
Yeah.
So I think um sometimes I want to go back a little bit to the repetition thing
Yeah.
because it's also in just some of the silly little moments where
Mm,
he repeats things. And my favorite one, maybe I've been saving it. My favorite sentence is on page 129. I'm just going to read the paragraph. Miss Cunehan and Neary laughed profusely. He is so importunate. Importunate? I don't know the word. Said Neary. So pushing, said Miss Cunehan. So thrusting. As an abomination, said Wiley, the creepy thing that creepeth of the law. Yet I pursue him. the creepy thing that creepeth of the law. And again, it sounds like meme speak. Like our
Well,
people are
it,
online like dicking around.
it's like meme speak, but it's also like something from the Bible. I know, like I know that's like there's some phrase like it. Like the that uses that.
Oh, oh my God, it's actually silly in the Bible. And every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth shall be an abomination. Sorry, it's already silly in the Bible. I are it's like it's like he's calling attention to the fact that like even out of context when you read that Bible passage, it's just silly, you know.
Yeah.
A
Now,
bulbous thing that flatulates around the flat. I don't know. Yeah, it's stupid.
yeah. Now this is like more or less my favorite part. It's less funny, but I just love the vision of it. And this is the third dark zone of Murphy's mind. The third, the dark, was a flux of forms, a perpetual coming together and falling asunder of forms. The light contained the docile element of a new manifold, the world of the body broken up into pieces of a toy. The half light, states of peace. But the dark, neither elements nor states, nothing but forms becoming and crumbling into the fragments of a new becoming, without love or hate or any intelligible principle of change. Here there was nothing but commotion and the pure forms of commotion. Here he was not free, but a mote in the dark of absolute freedom. He did not move, he was a point in the ceaseless, unconditioned generation and passing away of line. Matrix of surds. And I had to look up what surd was. It's apparently like a square root that doesn't like it's an irrational square root. So square root of two or square root of three. So I just think that's okay. But
Yeah, I
I
had to look
I
that.
just
I
love
had to
that
look that
vision. I love that vision. Like it's
yeah.
so fun and philosophical and intense and irrational. Um, like
But
as in
presented very, very lucidly. Like,
yes, exceptionally. As in, it's not just that things are changing; they're changing according to no law. It's not a law of love or hate or anything; just sheer generation. That's fantastic. Um, who could not help but admire that line?
I actually like the next part too because he leaves the idealistic world and kind of jumps it back into some gives us some nouns.
Hmm.
It was pleasant to kick the tickle pennies and miscarriages simultaneously together into ghastly acts of love. It was pleasant to lie dreaming on the shelf beside Belacqua, watching the dawn break crooked. But how much more pleasant was the sensation of being a missile without provenance or target, caught up in a tumult of non-Newtonian motion. So pleasant that pleasant was not the word. You're like,
So pleasant that pleasant was not the word.
and there's that repetition again, where
Like
it's
that.
like,
That's just so. Like it's just this like wonderful little contradiction that you know what it means though. It's like it's so intensely what it is. It's like it's more than what you normally call that.
yeah,
Um,
I kind of wonder, like, this is the type of novel, this sort of psychological, I mean, God, it's like you want to call it real world non-realism, but psychological realism. It's,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Because like that description really doesn't, it's not that it's crazy or beyond, it's that it's something we don't pay attention to. You
yeah.
know, it's
Well,
not something
it's
you
like
think
it's
about.
like Kafka in that it's a fantasy. It's not reality, but it's like taking real elements of actual experience. Like it's taking a real quality of the human mind of like just this spurious irrationality.
Yeah. And it's blows it up under the microscope. And so when you do that, I think it seems irrational, but just because the pieces are so small, it's like you don't see the little fuzzy bits. Because, like, on one level, I would go, no, I don't relate to the psychology of this man in any way. And then on another level, I would say, well, wait a minute, the framing of it is just how human thought works. It's just so under the microscope, I don't think about it.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
He's kind of a scientist, actually. Like
No,
he's kind
well,
of, you know what I mean? Like he's kind
all
of
real artists, I think, are in some level scientists. Like they're
no, like
working on.
he's so concerned with what it actually is.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Reality in
I'm.
psychic reality.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's interesting in this regard is I have this book of various people who knew Beckett
Yeah.
being interviewed. And one of them was talking about Beckett was saying that basically you can't really have a philosophy of meaninglessness or nihilism. What you because the thing is like the philosophy itself, like the fact of it being a ordered system,
Mm-hmm.
is in a sense undercutting that. It's not giving you it straight out. That irrationality, that purposelessness, that chaos, and that's what he's trying to convey in art. He's giving you it direct. Uh,
Yeah, and I think like, we don't normally talk this way very much, but like I think it's really appropriate to say like this is a very clear example of like a development in like writing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I want to speak with too much hyperbole, but it's he's doing something and with his compatriots of this era that's just like new. I mean, parts of Tristram Shandy, parts of other eras, like yeah, it's not like people weren't smart. It's just that the way he's a scientist of the internal psyche, I don't think of anything before the 20th century.
no, no,
Um,
inarguably, like there's
it's
nothing.
just like it's a new vista of expression in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's all things have precursors, but if the precursors were those things, we wouldn't call them precursors. So yeah, yeah, like, but
So how does I have a question for you? How does and this is going to be one-sided on in your favor because I haven't read Proust yet, and you read the first 50 pages of In Search of Lost Time.
makes me a world expert. Um,
Oh yes. Oh, all right. So, well, we're both world experts, so they're neither of us having degrees in literature. But
yeah.
like, what is how do they contrast? Because a lot
Okay,
of the ways we're using
like the similarity to the again, as I
yeah.
said, 50 pages, but it was like a pretty self-contained episode.
Yeah.
What I read. Um, it's one thing. One similarity is the lack of action, like
Okay.
the sheer sort of withdrawal into the intellect and sort of the interplay of the mind.
Mhm.
Um, the atmosphere of neurosis. With Proust, it's a gentle, delicate, gentlemanly kind of neurosis. Someone who's decadent and weak and but sensitive. While Beckett, it's so like earthy. But like
This
it's still like an atmosphere of neurosis. It's still like this with the primacy of consciousness
yeah.
at every moment. So I mean that's how I would compare them. I mean Proust is much more is well he's realistic. Like these are like actual people you would meet.
Oh
Like
yeah, there's not this sort of like machinic quality because Beckett gives the real world a sort of machinic thing with the body motion. It's not really the right word, but he tells it askance. I'll say
yeah,
it
I
like.
mean what's interesting is like sort of like a middle point between the two you might say is Joyce.
Hmm.
Because Joyce is more grossly physical, particularly in like Ulysses. Um, it's very, it's a book that's very pungent.
Hmm.
Um,
Cool.
so,
Would you say Benedetto? So the main character in the Benedetto and Murphy have some strange overlaps, wouldn't you say? A little bit, like not at all in tone, but like the middlingness of them.
Oh, that's okay. Well, oh God, just to put the two next to each other is so difficult.
It's so difficult. Here's an easier one.
Uh-huh.
The angularness of the prose. Di
Yeah,
Benedetto has these
it's
sentences that are just so stabby.
yeah. Beckett is much more intensely philosophical,
That's true.
and his characters, in a sense, they're more impotent, but they're more self-possessed in a certain way. Like
Are they
Debed,
maybe a little more human? Because De Benedetto, the characters, you're kind of like, wow, this guy's really crazy and perverse. That's fun. But with Murphy, I was still some of the stuff he was saying, I was able to be in the first person mindset without an issue for some
yeah,
reason.
as in, yeah, the actual voices of the characters are like actual people you would meet. Like Benedetto characters are like ghosts,
Yeah.
dry ghosts. Um,
I think you'd like he has a novel called The Silentiary. I think you'd like because it's his autobiographical one. So the main character is him, and it's about his lifelong obsession with noise pollution, which just fits with all this modernist bullshit we're doing. I mean, with love, right? Like, and so it's like it goes with his troubles of like how the neighbors are building like a stoop and how it's like taking up so much time to get them to stop and how he like thinks about resorting to violence, but he's a nice guy. It's a lot more human and a lot more Becketty, I think, because the main character of the one we read is just so strange and odd.
one day I will return to my wife. Like that's
like he like tries to rape somebody and then it's like, well, that didn't work. Now I gotta hide. And you're like, what is going on? I was like, I'm creeping in the bushes for this chapter. You're like, wow, this is a pretty weird dude. I don't know about this guy.
yeah, it's oh God, it's I really enjoyed that novel and like every moment of it was so crisp, but another part of me felt like it was like a brain fever I never want to return to.
Like I don't ever need to read it again. Whereas with
Yeah,
Murphy, I'm like, yeah, I'd read this again in a couple years. Sure, why the fuck not? It's great.
yeah.
I think that the reason why
Beckett
I'm
is so much more human.
so much more there's something a little like godly about Di Benedetto, but he's a little above me. Not because Beckett's using all these language things, but sometimes when Benedetto's writing, I'm like kind of just along for the spectacle of it all.
Yeah, I mean Benedetto is he has a much more of this sort of I want to say grandeur, but I don't want to say that by and belittle Beckett in any way. Just by saying he has that element, it's just there's something like better about Beckett. I want to say overall,
Me too.
like it's more profound Beckett, but like there is a much more in present sense of grandeur with Benedetto, which is so weird to talk about with that book, but yeah, but like yeah,
Well, I
the
think part of
the
why we
inner
read it is
impetus.
because it's so strange, right? Like hit me with something new and you read Benedetto.
Yeah, I mean, like Benedetto, like that image. The best image of the book, in a sense, is, um, the corpse of a rotting monkey caught up in a pier, that's dilapidated and disintegrating. It's like that's just like it's a good image. It's a good image.
There's some crossover more between him and Conrad. Not just scenery. I know they're in the jungle. It's not a civilized, uncivilized thing. Just like there just seems to have that similar otherworldliness to the imagery.
um to an extent, I guess for me Conrad is just so much more 19th century in his whole sensibility of it is this world, it is real world, and like yeah, it's like more intense. Like yeah, there is a certain relationship, but I when I think about Conrad, I just think about like here's someone who just likes to see a good sailor's not done well.
Oh, I thought
Um,
you were gonna say,
he would
here's
just
someone who
look at
likes
a,
a good hanging.
you know,
Sorry.
like he would just admire, like, God, the rigging on that three-masted schooner is immaculate. Like, I
Rigging on that the rigging on that noose is just perfection. String
don't.
them up, boys. Well, he's sort of a viewer. I think what's similar is that like Conrad is a viewer in Heart of Darkness. He's like act he's sort of passively at certain points watching things happen. He's more of a journalist in
Yeah.
that. But back to the Beckett. I every time we read Beckett, I always have a conflict in my brain, which is the greatness of the writing versus how much I don't really empathize with the sense of life at all. Like I don't really like I guess I'm not really a nihilist in that soft,
Yeah,
cozy
no,
nihilist way.
no, I'm not a nihilist either, and
I
even
find it a little barren. I have to like I love reading Beckett, but after Beckett, now I'm reading Ali Smith's Summer, which is like summertime meaning, because it's like after Beckett, I kind of crave something more meaningful, I guess. I
well,
don't know. It's
I
weird, right? Like,
want, yeah, as in like I'm even like when I've been nihilistic, like gone through phases of that, I don't identify with Beckett's nihilism. It's like, no, I'm more of a Conrad boy or Chekhov, you
yeah,
know.
he's like his nihilism is the nihilism of a robot that came to life. Like
Yeah,
mathematically has no meaning.
it's just like there's not even a memory of what meaning could be. As in meaning, what could you possibly mean by that word? Um
Yeah, like there's that great quote in Rick and Morty where it's like, I once saw Rick briefly forget the word for human. And I'm like, oh yeah, Beckett would do that. If it wasn't so obviously humanistic in this weird way, in a lot of ways, it's sort of kind of alien. I don't know. It's kind of
no,
removed.
it is
It's
very alien in
political.
like the Kafka kind of way, and
Uh,
I mean in a certain way, almost like Camus kind of way. Also, because Camus is sort of inhuman in his own way. A little more real, but yeah, Benedetto is inhuman.
yeah. And
Joyce
I
is very human.
and occasionally it's like I don't mind if I disagree with the beliefs. I just need someone to have them. You
Yeah,
know, like
like
I need to have someone passionate about a thing so I can interpassively follow their passion in a
like
sense.
like well,
Also,
Rand, who is a rather a critic of modernism, we might say.
a
Um,
little.
I think she did hit the nail on the head though of saying that modern literature was like a value deprivation chamber. Um,
Little bit. I mean, we both love this shit, right? Like it's great, but also, like if one of my coworkers who reads like hundreds of books a year at the bookstore was like, I don't really like modernism because it's this way, I'd be like, that's fine.
yeah, like I have a good friend who's I feel like maybe he's a big reader of like up through the 19th century, and his taste, but like I do feel like maybe he could one day like a few bits of modernism or appreciate in an abstract impersonal way, but this is not his jam. This is
Yeah.
not his jam.
Well, it's not even really my jam. Like it's weird because it's my jam in all the technical aspects. And there's so many times I'm reading it, I'm going, yes, that's amazing. And then I go to write my own things, and it's I take over the formal bits and the innovations, but like I want to write characters that want something. I don't know. It's
Me
like
too. I feel like where this goes in my mind is well, basically my analogy is modernism is a place I need to vacation in but can't live in.
I can't do
Like
it. Yeah,
I will, if I don't have some modernism for a while, like I'll have a hankering.
yeah.
I have to leave. I have to leave eventually.
Because otherwise you're missing other aspects of life. Like as great as Beckett is, there are moments where he's not a Hegelian. He's not getting the whole of it in there. It's very focused. And if you read it thinking it's the whole of life, you're going to be really sad.
Yeah, yeah, and well, just take a look at Beckett's face and say, "Do you want to be like that? Um, is this aspirational for you? Like, it's a marvelous face,
Yeah,
but
he's like already a corpse. you know?
yeah, and he he did refer to like I don't know, like broke it off with some women just by saying like, "There's nothing human left in me." Um,
Hey Ray, if I ever say that, I need you to call the suicide hotline. It's yeah. But anyway, I have to head out, unfortunately. I really enjoyed this choice as much as I complain to you over text occasionally, like I'm slogging through. It's really worth it, more than worth it. I wound up really loving, especially the second half.
yeah, yeah, but next time we'll do something more human of Iris Murdoch.
Yeah, just like a nice, normal novelist. This is not to make her sound like a bad writer. She's a great writer. It's just,
Yeah, yeah. Like I want to know what this philosophical lady's like.
yeah, let's do
But
another.
all right. But
There's someone else we might do at some point,
who?
Oh, Rand. You know.
Oh yeah, Rand. Oh yes, yes, that lady. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I'm an objectivist over here, and I forget.
you know,
Um,
I heard she wrote some novels. I might be wrong.
yeah. I'll have to verify that.
We might have to read them to make sure. Okay.
Yeah. It's a question mark. But anyway. But yeah. So I don't know. We do an artist trauma last line here, or
Oh yeah. It's traumatic because is that all there is? Yes.
I mean, for me, I'll just say it's I I do. Oh God, it's not a favorite novel for me because it is just so dense, the writing, but just so many of those like just that vision of Murphy's mind, just that vision of that world. Um, it's such a good. It's the most perverse form of Platonism I know. Anyway,
Yes.
all right. So anyway, great talking, Chris.
Great.
Anyway, so all right. So bye.
Bye bye.